What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 537 of #AskGSM, here today for Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. Head of AEW Big Business tonight, a lot of questions to get into, and not only is the show tonight, I will be there in Boston for the show, so I'm looking forward to it. I've been to a handful of AEW shows in the past year that were like, if it was a regular Dynamite, I probably wouldn't go, but they did Blood and Guts in that same arena last summer, which was great. Really fun show, fun match, whatever. Then it was also at World's End, which was in Long Island, about 2 hours from here to 2.5 hours. That was a good show. And then we're at Big Business tonight with the very likely expected debut of Mercedes Moné. So it's going to be a fun night. Looking forward to it. A lot of memories and nostalgia and just strong attachment to that arena in Boston and just the Boston area in general. So I'm looking forward to being back a little bit later on tonight for that show. But before then, we're answering your questions from Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. If you want me to answer your question from any of these platforms, be sure to send in your questions on Twitter at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM, on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop your question on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, through YouTube in the comment section down below. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So I've yet to organize all the questions, per usual. I mean, I feel like that's the case half the time. So if you feel, or if you hear one of your questions at one part, on one platform I'm talking, I go by YouTube, and then Facebook, and then Twitter. But I'm just saying, if you hear one of your YouTube questions here, and then again a little bit later on, that's why they're just not organized yet. But anyway, first question comes from Chris W. from YouTube. Their first question was, he says, "Hey Graham, hope you're doing well and having a fantastic week so far. The Oscars happened on Sunday, and the show itself was pretty good, I thought. Did you watch it, and did you get any of your predictions right?" I don't make Oscar predictions, really, at all, because I don't really look at the nominees more often than not. I'm a movie guy, but I don't really watch. I've never watched the Oscars, like, live. I usually catch up on the clips and the highlights after the fact. I did see the I'm Just Ken performance. Alexa showed me that in full. That was actually really good. I thought Ryan Gosling did an amazing job. I saw that. Obviously saw the Cena clip. How could you not? That was all over the place the next day, later that night. So I saw the Cena naked thing. So I saw that Robert Downey Jr. won Best Supporting Actor in Oppenheimer, and he did a fantastic job. I forgot what the other nominees were for that, but I thought that was a worthy, winner. I saw that. I saw Best Visual Effects or something along those lines for Godzilla, another worthy award. That was a great movie, -1 that came out last year. I saw Best Animated Movie. Now, I didn't see The Boy and the Heron. I heard it was really good, or that it looked good. I still would have given it to the... I actually did see the nominees a while ago. That's not true. I actually did look up, and because they announced the nominees a few months ago, and I saw them at that point, and I was discussing it with Alexa. So now that I remember that, I did actually look them up a while ago. But the Boy and the Heron one, I mean, I'm sure that was a great movie. I would still have given it to the Spider-Verse and the Across the Spider-Verse. I saw that on my birthday last year. Amazing movie. So, not a big... issue that it did not win, just because it seems like that Boy and the Heron movie was really well received. And then I saw that there were a few other ones, but Poor Things won Movie of the Year. The funny thing about that, quick side story, so the awards, the Oscars were on Sunday. Didn't watch them, heard about them, saw some highlights on Twitter, whatever. I saw Al Pacino announcing the award for Oppenheimer. Was that like the... No, I'm sorry. Poor Things did not win Movie of the Year. Best Picture, whatever. That won Best Actress with Emma Stone. Movie of the Year was Oppenheimer. Again, I thought Oppenheimer was really good, so I'm not really surprised by that one, and it seems like a worthy winner. But Poor Things was on Hulu as like, it's up for a nominee, and now it won Best Actress, blah, blah, blah. They do that stuff pretty much every year when like something's nominated. They put it on the streaming services or put it back in theater so people can see it. So after the Oscars, and it got more buzz, and I had heard about it, I watched it on Monday night with Alexis, during Raw, actually, not simultaneously. I watched Raw after the fact. But instead of watching Raw live, I watched Poor Things with her. Really weird fucking movie. I go into more depth about it, only so much depth anyway, in my Letterboxd review that I put up yesterday, actually, so you can check it out. I thought it was a really good movie. Just so fucking weird, and just some stuff I didn't really think was necessary. It's just not really up my alley. I'm not really a big fan of the weird stuff. But I did think that Emma Stone did an amazing job as the lead role as Bella. So the fact that it won Best Actress does not surprise me, and it was a worthy award because she did an amazing job. The movie itself was fucking weird. But, those are my thoughts on that. So we move on to his next question. Let's see. He said, I look back on The Miz's title reign in 2010, 2011 as one of the worst title reigns of the last 20 years. I understand the reason why he did, but looking back on it, he didn't really show that he was up to the task of being a world champion / main event performer. His matches were nothing special, or his promos were just repetitive and drawn out. Why do you think a lot of fans were not sold on The Miz as world champion, and how would you have booked him better as the champion? You know, it's an interesting question. I'm a Miz guy. I actually really enjoyed the reign. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it was one of the best reigns of the last 20 years. You're saying it's one of the worst. I think somewhere in the middle is more appropriate. I mean, you could really go down and rank all the world champion runs of the past 20 years and see where it really ranks as far as one of the worst or one of the best, whatever. The build was there. I mean, he was kind of gradually built up as a main event performer. So the Jinder Mahal thing, Jinder was never going to be a main event guy. I mean, he was a main event guy as WWE champion, but he's just one of those guys that should not have been in that role. You could say what you want about The Miz. The Jinder run has got to be the worst WWE title reign if not ever, maybe not the worst, but one of the worst of all time. Because the guy just was not cut out to be a main event performer. The Jack Swagger run was also worse. He was not WWE champion, he was World Heavyweight champion. But that run was also worse. He fucking lost all the time. At least with The Miz, they built him up properly. He won Money in the Bank. He kind of gradually worked his way up the card by working with people like Orton and Cena and Daniel Bryan, other upper mid-carders from around that period that made him better. His matches really weren't that bad. Were his matches anything special? No, but there's been a lot of world champions whose matches were nothing special. This was back in 2010, 2011, where the matches really weren't all that great anyway, for the most part, unless you were CM Punk or Daniel Bryan. The matches, for the most part, around that period were nothing amazing regardless. That being said, the promos I thought were fine. It was, I think, always kind of clear when he was champion the reason why people never really bought into it. And I thought the cash in itself was great. They never really booked him that strong. But that being said, though, that wasn't really the point. He wasn't supposed to be out there being a strongly booked world champion. He was a chicken shit heel champion. He would only ever really win due to interference from other people. He did beat Jerry Lawler clean a few times, but again, that's Jerry Lawler. But I think even the first time they faced off on Raw in a TLC match, I think the only reason Jerry Lawler lost was because of Michael Cole, of all people. So, interference there. TLC, there was some fuck up with the finish in storyline with Alex Riley getting put through a table. They restarted the match. Miz actually won the match twice, back to back, but Riley got involved. At the Royal Rumble, the Nexus got involved. At WrestleMania, The Rock got involved. He was always kind of the background player. During the Orton feud, that was just a setup for Orton's feud with CM Punk. During the Cena feud, that was just a setup for Cena and The Rock for the following year. So he was always kind of a background player. He was never really the main focus. And if he was the main focus, he was feuding with Jerry Lawler or someone like that, who was great. I mean, Jerry Lawler's a legend, obviously, but he's not really a main event performer on Raw even in 2010, 2011. So I think Miz played his role really, really well. And you could say what you will about the promos, but I think the reason why a lot of people weren't really a big fan of it, and even when he won it, I saw people shitting on it back in 2010. So it's not really like a retrospective thing now, like, oh man, it really wasn't that good, let's shit on it now. No, there were people that didn't like it even then. Because he wasn't on the same level at that point. He is now, I mean, maybe not even now, but back then he was still early on in his career, and he had won mid-card championships and stuff like that. But, Cena was a main event level performer. Orton was a main event level performer. Edge, people like that. Miz wasn't quite there yet. There were some things he still needed to tweak and improve on the mic, in the ring, as a character, stuff like that. So he wasn't just doing the same shtick all the time. He also did get great heat. So that's why he made for a really fun champion, I thought, because he got great heat throughout his entire time, probably that point more than any other point aside from maybe 2016. I mean, he got really, really good heat around that time. And he could back it up enough to where I thought he did fit in the role. Jinder got great heat too, but the guy could not back it up in the role. His promos were infinitely worse. His matches were much worse, much more fucking boring. His feuds were more boring. That was a dark period for SmackDown. When Miz was champion, I really did not think it would kill the brand or it was killing the title. He just kind of went from having people hold it like Cena, like Orton, to then The Miz, which was kind of a jump point. But anyway, they tried to make a new star in The Miz. And it wasn't like a quick thing like with Jinder where they only did it to probably boost numbers in India, and stuff like that, which was the whole point of why they did the whole point of the Jinder experiment was to boost their market in India and stuff like that. That wasn't even the case with The Miz. They genuinely tried to make a new star in The Miz. And I would argue they did, where his championship runs, his world title runs, all that memorable? No, I mean, the first one's memorable. It wasn't amazing. But he went on to win a lot of championships, be, main event other pay-per-views, win a lot of other championships. He's not like a solidified main event guy because he's just not as good as other people they've had in the company since then. People like CM Punk. Again, he was another one where I'll move on from this question in a second, but I think it's a really good question. There were other guys during that point that could have been the champion. That's the other issue, too. They put the belt on The Miz when they never put it on Wade Barrett. And Wade Barrett was the guy that was getting a lot of heat in the Nexus. He was built up well for a while, for a bit anyway, before he lost to Cena a few times. But they could have put it on Barrett. They could have put it on CM Punk. Now, Barrett isn't amazing in the ring, but he's a much better talker than Miz, and he kind of fit that world champion role. CM Punk did end up getting the belt, obviously, months later. But even he, during that period, that feud with him and Orton probably could have been a main event program because the match at WrestleMania was much better than Miz and Cena. So there's a lot of factors, but I really wouldn't go so far as to say it was one of the worst. But I would also say that all the reasons I just mentioned were why a lot of people were not buying him in that role. Good question, though. Your next question. Bobby Fish, ever since leaving TNA, has basically vanished from pro wrestling limelight until recently, signing with Major League Wrestling, MLW. Did he sign with them, though? I know he's been appearing there. I don't know if he signed with them, but anyway. You said, while I respect him as an in-ring worker, I lost a certain amount of respect for him for not only going to business for himself during a match he had with CM Punk, but for also burying him in a debut in his TNA debut, in his TNA debut. I don't know, that wording is weird. Back in 2022. My biggest gripe with him is the way that he basically scolding Tony Khan by saying that he would go to war for Triple H. Do you think Fish was in the wrong for what he did after he left AEW? Why do you think he flopped in TNA? And does he kind of resemble what Mercedes said about going back to WWE? I mean, Bobby Fish and Mercedes Moné are just not even remotely on the same level. That's not even a question, obviously. And I like Bobby Fish, but he has said a lot of dumb things. You mentioned going to business for yourself and that whole thing. I was there for that match with Punk. The finish was fucking weird. Like, he kicked out of the GTS. They counted 3 anyway. It was bizarre. I was there for that match actually in Boston a few years back, and it just was bizarre. It was the way that when as soon as he left AEW, and it kind of seemed like AEW just didn't really want him, because why would Bobby Fish leave? It's not like, he hasn't done anything since. He didn't go back to WWE. It seemed like Tony Khan didn't really have a use for him. Honestly, I'm thinking in retrospect, now that Kyle O'Reilly just came back, they could always reunite them at some point, but there's a ceiling there with Kyle O'Reilly on his own. You might as well use that as opposed to just putting him right back with Bobby Fish, which, been there, done that, whatever. They're a tremendous team. But with Bobby Fish, with Kyle O'Reilly out, Adam Cole was still out around that point, you got no fucking use for Bobby Fish. He's a headache, seemingly. You get rid of him, and that's exactly what they did. But the whole, he asked a lot of questions in one here, as far as, was he wrong for what he did after he left AEW? He talked a lot of shit. That was the biggest problem, was that he went on his podcast, and, I respect honesty, but it just sounded like he was fucking whining. The whole CM Punk thing, he had an issue with him, he had an issue with this guy, that guy. I mean, that wasn't really seeming like, it didn't really seem like he had an issue with a lot of people, but it was just his attitude and, the whole aspect of leaving a company and then shooting on it right after you leave. It's not like he was used poorly is the thing. If he was, then okay, I get it. But, it was just weird. The way he kind of talked about it after he left kind of made it seem like he was complaining about something that wasn't really there. He was complaining about a Punk match and making comments about Punk, well over a year after the match happened. Why is this even important? Who gives a shit? He was tweeting about him. It was obsessive ex-boyfriend-girlfriend behavior. It was weird. But, so that, in addition to the TNA debut, I don't think he was ever supposed to, you called it a TNA run, he never really even signed there. I think the officials at the time, Scott D'Amore, probably saw it as, we really don't have any plans for this guy long term. We just want to use him fresh off his departure from AEW. Not get a rating out of it, because the guy's not a ratings draw at all. But we'll use him for a couple matches here and there. We'll put him in a match with, Josh Alexander on TV for the World Championship. Get a good match out of it there. Maybe the intention was to sign him, and then he didn't want to sign, because maybe he thought he would go back to WWE. I don't know. WWE is not going to take back Bobby Fish on his own. Listen, I thought the same thing about Shawn Spears. Shawn Spears, I think, might have more value in an in-ring role at this point than Bobby Fish. Maybe they bring back Bobby Fish and put him on NXT. I have no idea. But I would think that NXT would only bring him back at this point unless it were the other members of Undisputed Era. And even if they were to do that, the guy's almost 50 now. They might have to leave him out of the equation. He's getting up there, and he's still good. Bobby Fish isn't bad at all. but I don't think enough people care about Bobby Fish on his own. And even in the group at this point, they could probably leave him out of it. But I think he would suit better. He would be a much better coach or a trainer at NXT at the Performance Center. I don't know if that really appealed to him. As far as what he said about WWE, the Mercedes thing was not dumb, because she's not wrong. She will be back. She definitely probably should not have said that publicly. When you're doing an interview, and it's not known that she is debuting tonight, but it's pretty much known that she's debuting tonight. When you're having an interview to kind of prepare people for the idea that you're popping back up again in wrestling very soon, she had made a comment about how, I'm going to end up back in WWE soon. Probably not the best timing if you're set to debut for the other company in about a week. Like, you don't hear Edge and other people like that saying, I'm going to enjoy this run and then I'll go back to WWE after it's over. They're honest, and I appreciate the honesty, but you don't just say that sort of thing. Because it makes that company look less than that you're only going there for a quick pit stop before you go back to WWE. So she probably should not have said that publicly on camera. I heard it got cut out, but it made the rounds on social media and online and on Twitter anyway. So definitely not a very smart thing to say, just because it doesn't really put the new company that you're signing with in the best light. As far as Bobby Fish, he's not Mercedes Moné. I don't know when he said that. Did he say that when he was in AEW? I mean, if he had said that, that was not the reason why they let him go. I mean, he worked very closely with Triple H, and honestly, I'm sure there's a lot of people in AEW currently that would say something similar, that worked very closely with him in NXT and at other points in their career. Maybe not quite to the extent that Bobby Fish did. I think he did say that while he was with the company. But, as far as something like that, I would go to war with the guy. There's a lot of people in AEW, and Vince McMahon is a much worse person, obviously, than Triple H. There are still people there that say, I love Vince, and, he was so great to me, he gave me a career. Like Bryan Danielson has said that in the past. He's gone on record in praising Vince as being like a father figure to him and all this other sort of shit, which is kind of cringy looking back on it, considering what Vince has been accused of, but everyone has different experiences. Still, you probably shouldn't say stuff like that and not hold the guy accountable. But again, people like him were kind of saying that in different words, like I would go to war for that guy, even though he's not currently working with them. So I don't really think it was that big of a deal the way that he worded it. It's not like he said, I'm going to go back there. The Mercedes comment was very different. The Mercedes comment literally confirmed, I am going back there when I'm done in AEW. The Bobby Fish comment was basically saying, I would go to war with the guy. I had a lot of fun working with him, blah, blah, blah. That's really about it. It's not like he said, I'm going to go back there when I'm done in AEW. Maybe he did and I missed it, but I think the comment he made was far from the reason, I think, of why he got let go by AEW, and they didn't re-sign his contract. Your next question, Chris. I was deeply disappointed in WWE not pulling the trigger on Chad Gable getting the shot at WrestleMania versus Gunther. While it may seem obvious that Sami was going to get it, I wish Triple H would have switched plans a la Daniel Bryan in 2014 and given Gable the shot due to the story they were telling between him and Gunther. I know Sami's the bigger star, rightfully so, but Chad Gable should be allowed to finish his story with Gunther instead of just being thrown aside for another one of Paul's favorites. What do you think? No, listen, I think Chad Gable should have won too. I've been saying, so here's the issue, because I have said in writing and on audio that Sami Zayn should be facing Gunther at Mania. And the reason I say that is because they waited way too fucking long, and Triple H and WWE are to blame for this, as are the fact that Chad didn't win on Monday. But I'm just saying, grand scheme here. If Chad Gable had lost to Gunther in September, okay, and had continued to bring up consistently that he wanted to finish that story with Gunther, and he was built up and having other feuds and winning more matches, then they would have no choice but to go with Gunther in that spot. But they didn't do that. Chad Gable was never the end game, at least as far as WrestleMania, that was never the end game. Sami Zayn is clearly just a replacement for Brock. Could they have replaced Brock with Gable and had the championship change hands? Yeah, they very well could have. I just don't think that if he was going to face Brock, I feared that Brock would win, and I think that would have been fucking terrible. Maybe Brock was going to lose. We really have no confirmation of that. If the idea was that Brock was going to lose and that Gunther was always going to walk out of WrestleMania as Intercontinental Champion and he was going to hold on to it for a little while longer, then no, Gable should not face Gunther at Mania if he is going to lose. Again, he has to beat Gunther when he faces him. Unlike with Cody, and I feel differently with the Gable thing than I do with Cody. The Cody thing is a Mania match. Gunther and Gable, to me, can also be a Mania match, but they waited way too long to heat Gable back up, start building him back up, and make people care about his story, and Sami just has a built-in story as well, wanting to get to WrestleMania. He gains nothing from winning the Intercontinental Championship. Had they started and continued the Gable stuff sooner, I think they would have had no choice but to put him in that role. But because they waited way too long, and they did the video packages in the past week or two, it was on such short notice. Now, I still would have wished they could have gone with Gable regardless, despite what I just said. But they're not. They're going to go with Sami because they want to get him on the card, and they should. If Sami doesn't face Gunther, I'm not really sure what else you do with him at WrestleMania. Of the two, who should miss Mania more? Probably Chad Gable. I mean, Gable should be facing Gunther, but Sami, after headlining last year's show, should be on WrestleMania. Gable, him and Gunther, I am stupidly optimistic here. I'm not saying this will happen, but that's a story you can finish coming out of WrestleMania. SummerSlam might be too far away, but you can always pick up with that feud coming out of WrestleMania because Sami should not win. I don't think Sami's in. If he were to win, it'd be cool. Great moment at WrestleMania. I don't think Sami needs to be the one to dethrone Gunther at WrestleMania. There's no real story there, aside from the fact he's trying to build himself back up and be the underdog and, pick up that elusive win. That elusive win for Sami and winning whenever it matters most, I think should come at WrestleMania next year if you were to win the World Heavyweight Championship, or to win the World Heavyweight Championship before, then after that. It doesn't have to be at WrestleMania 41 specifically. But I'm just saying, this whole story they were telling with Sami being down on his luck and wanted to prove himself as a main event performer, he kind of mentioned the World Heavyweight Championship at one point before kind of moving away from that about a month ago in those sit-down interviews that were airing on Raw. The Intercontinental Championship he's already held before. So I don't really think he gains a whole lot by winning that title, being the one to dethrone Gunther. Sami's already a made guy. It would be historic, which is what he's looking for. It would be historic for him to beat Gunther at Mania, be the first person to beat him on the main roster, take the title from him, end the historic reign. It would certainly be historic, but I think someone like a Gable could benefit more from being in that spot. So I'm hoping, now I know I don't want to defend their booking decision, but I'm hoping that Sami won because he is losing at WrestleMania, and then Gable can win the championship at some other point coming out of WrestleMania, whether it be a Backlash or the pay-per-view after that or whatever. Maybe not at SummerSlam because, again, that's too far away, I think. They kind of have to strike when the iron's hot and not forget about Gable for another fucking 5 months and then heat him up a week or two beforehand because at that point people just won't care, I don't think. So I think that's the route that they can go. And then get back to Sami and Gunther, with Gunther beating Sami at Mania, and then Sami wins the World Heavyweight Championship from Gunther at Mania next year or something like that. That's what I would do. Someone else asked about Sami and Gunther, and that's what I would do. But anyway, next question from Bill M. from YouTube. I love both AJ Styles and LA Knight, but I just can't get excited for the match. I just don't think it massively makes sense, and I'm not sure their styles, no pun intended, will make for a good match. Seems WWE can't get behind the LA Knight movement enough for him to be the one to take either the Intercontinental or United States Championships. Why do you think this is, and your thoughts on this match? Yeah, listen, I'm not really overly optimistic about the match either. The match itself could be good, very good, whatever. And I disagree that it doesn't make sense. I mean, they've had a story going here with these two dating back to late last year when AJ got taken out by the Bloodline. LA Knight stepped up in his place, and AJ's been bitter about that ever since. That was in September, October. So they do have a story. They interacted during the Roman Reigns feud for the World Championship. Knight cost him a qualifier at Elimination Chamber. AJ retaliated by costing him his spot in the match, which also made sense. At Elimination Chamber, it cost him the opportunity to advance to WrestleMania for the World Heavyweight Championship. It's a match that does make sense. I'm not denying that. I just think it's a feud that could have been wrapped up at Chamber, because Logan Paul and LA Knight we haven't seen before. They've actually largely not interacted at all since their few interactions on the road to Money in the Bank last summer. I feel like that was by design, so they can kind of go back to it around WrestleMania. Again, kind of similar to what I'm talking about. I do think LA Knight should have won a championship at WrestleMania after losing a lot of pay-per-view matches in recent months. He lost to Roman Reigns, he lost to the Royal Rumble, lost to the Elimination Chamber. I do think he will win at WrestleMania. But the problem is I do think he should have been the one to beat Logan Paul at Mania. Now, Logan Paul, it seems he might be more of a full-time performer going forward, which is great. I don't think you can wait until SummerSlam for that because they're going to be in Cleveland for that show. They just announced that yesterday. Logan Paul is an Ohio native. I think he's a Cleveland guy. I'm not sure it's all that smart to put LA Knight where he's the babyface against the heel Logan Paul. I don't know if they're going to cheer Logan Paul anyway. They probably won't, but we don't know until it comes. Probably not the best idea. And Logan Paul should be dropping the championship before SummerSlam anyway. I think LA Knight should be champion well before SummerSlam anyway. You could do it at Backlash, whatever. That match should have happened at WrestleMania. I agree with that. The utilization of LA Knight at Mania this year is disappointing for a guy that was one of the most over guys in the entire company in 2023. That's like Daniel Bryan having the breakout year that he had in 2023 and then having a random fucking mid-card match with Sheamus in 2014. It's almost the exact same thing. Now with Bryan, it made more sense for him to get back to the World Heavyweight Championship, and he did, and he won at WrestleMania, whatever. With LA Knight, he could at least go for a championship. He could at least go for the United States Championship. The Intercontinental title, maybe if he gets drafted to Raw coming into WrestleMania, I don't really see that, but I feel like the U.S. title suits him perfectly. He could have a fun feud with Logan Paul, and we're just not getting that right now. I do think we will get it at some point, but Logan Paul might not be champion. He might drop the belt to Mania to either Orton or Owens, and I don't really want to see that either. I don't think Owens or Orton need that championship. LA Knight would need it more. So I'm right there with you. I don't really think the use of LA Knight at Mania this year is what it should be. I do think he should be. At least he's on the card after missing last year's installment, which was dumb. But he should definitely be in a higher profile match on the card, winning a championship. Because that's kind of been his story, where he's been very over with the audience, but he has nothing to show for it aside from winning the SummerSlam Battle Royal at the Slim Jim Battle Royal at SummerSlam last year. Beating AJ, same thing. Great win. Doesn't really matter, though, because he's not really winning a championship, So they could be doing better with LA Knight at WrestleMania for sure. Your next question. He says, with it looking very likely it'll be Sami versus Gunther one-on-one, and I think you said that probably before Raw. You said, do you see Chad and Otis now favorites for the tag team match against Priest and Balor, or do you still think Awesome Truth will get their moment and Gable could end up part of the match with Gunther and Zayn? Listen, I don't think so. At this point, it's got to be one-on-one. Gunther should not have another triple threat at WrestleMania. The guy deserves the single spotlight at WrestleMania. I don't think you should. I mean, it wouldn't be a bad idea, but Gable, I'd rather see Gable in there with Gunther one-on-one. And Sami and Gunther is also a stronger match one-on-one than the triple threat. And we're also getting another triple threat already for the United States Championship. Not everything needs to be a multi-man match. The tag team titles is one thing, which another thing, I don't really think that needs to be a multi-team match either. It sounds like it's going to be awesome, like an absolute fucking mess, absolutely. But it sounds like it will be an awesome match, no pun intended. But 6 teams? I mean, Awesome Truth is right there. Awesome Truth and Judgment Day is the match. And if that's not enough of a Mania match for them, then throwing in another 5 teams, then whatever, I guess. Another 4 or 5 teams. So I do still think it will be Awesome Truth. Gable and Otis do not need to win the tag team titles. That would be a waste of Gable. Gable should stay on the singles thing going forward until he finishes the thing with Gunther, which he probably won't. They might turn him heel instead, which would be very fucking dumb, I think. But no, it's not even Gable and Otis actually in the match on Raw next week. They could change it, but it's Otis and Akira Tozawa. And I don't even think they're winning. I think a New Day is going to advance, and they're going to go to WrestleMania. So I don't think anyone from Alpha Academy will even be wrestling at WrestleMania, aside from the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal that's going to happen on the SmackDown before. Unfortunately for Chad, but that's just the way I see it playing out. Jordan B. from YouTube, do you think Mark Henry's World Heavyweight Championship reign in 2011 was too short? I feel like they could have waited until WrestleMania 28 to take the title off of him, maybe to Sheamus or Daniel Bryan cash in. Listen, my man, you read my mind. I wrote a lot of articles and made a lot of videos about how Mark Henry should hold that championship from Night of Champions when he won it through WrestleMania. And the 2 people I would have preferred to see take the championship off of him were Daniel Bryan and Sheamus. Now, Daniel Bryan at that point, I think it even said he wanted the cash in at WrestleMania. No one has ever announced they're cashing in at Mania and done it. Daniel Bryan pulled a Kennedy and maybe he didn't say. I think he did, though. I feel like he did say in a promo he's going to hold on to it until WrestleMania. He had that fake cash-in on SmackDown in like November, early December. That went nowhere. He ended up cashing in on Mark Henry in December. Now, I agree with you, and I would love to know what the original plan was. And maybe that was always the plan. I don't know. But I think they had done that. What they did, I mean, Big Show beating Mark Henry for it was fucking stupid. Only for Daniel Bryan to cash in. Wait, wasn't that what it was? Yeah, no, he cashed in on Big Show, did he not? He did. I think Mark Henry attacked Big Show afterward. Bryan cashed in on Big Show. They turned Bryan heel, which was, he ended up making for a great heel. Ended up working out, but I wasn't super fond of it at the time. But I think the reason why they did that was because Mark Henry got hurt. They had a really short chairs match at that TLC pay-per-view. The story of Mark Henry's career, by the way, guy getting hurt, he got hurt a lot during his career. And I think he got hurt, and they needed to take the championship off of him. I think they've confirmed this. So if he wasn't hurt, would they still have done what they did? Maybe. I don't think so, though. Would have he held the championship until WrestleMania? I don't know. I'm not sure. He may have. I don't know. But the Bryan thing made the most sense to me. Sheamus was also a good option. Sheamus obviously ended up winning the World Heavyweight, the Royal Rumble and the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania. They were pushing Sheamus pretty strongly as a babyface at that point. And not only that, but him and Mark Henry, that was Sheamus' first feud as a face back in late 2011. And Mark Henry won their match at SummerSlam by countout. They never really resolved that rivalry. So if they went back to it at WrestleMania and had Sheamus beat him there for the championship, that would have been cool. They could have done a triple threat. They could have had Sheamus win the Rumble, Bryan win Money in the Bank, just do them both in the same match. That would have been great. But no, they went the route that they did. They did the fucking 18-second bullshit with Bryan and Sheamus at Mania, which obviously got Bryan over more. The whole yes thing and whatever. But yeah, ideally, if Mark doesn't get hurt, which I think was the reason why they did what they did, then yes, I would have had Mark Henry hold the championship until at least WrestleMania. Extend the Hall of Pain thing and then drop it there to either Daniel Bryan or Sheamus. In an actual match that's not 15 seconds, or 18 seconds rather. Mikey does it from YouTube as well. His first question was, he says, great video as always, talking about last week. He says, with Chris Jericho current booking in AEW, not having direction and WWE having a new regime in charge, could one last part-time run in WWE for Chris Jericho be entertaining and something special? Jericho will not be back there anytime soon. I think in 2022 it was reported he signed a 5-year deal. Moxley too. But the difference between Moxley and Jericho is that Jericho's a lot older than Jon Moxley. Jericho's already in his early 50s. I don't even think a part-time run for Jericho at this point in WWE would be a good idea. Maybe if he left in 2022, then maybe. Like, if he were to come back to WWE for one more run, one more match, whatever, it would have to be for like 1 or 2 more matches. Like a full-on run. Not that the guy's bad. I mean, Jericho definitely is not the same performer he was even 5-10 years ago. Far from it. But, the guy still has value. It's just that in AEW, he's so fucking overexposed. Like, he's had a lot of fun matches, but he's way too overexposed. A part-time run might be stretching it. It depends when he were to come in. I mean, again, he's coming in, if he were to come in 3 years, when his contract in AEW is up, he would be 55-something years old. I mean, then we're just entering Bill Goldberg territory from 2016. Now, Jericho has been a lot more active than Goldberg and could wrestle a lot more than Goldberg, but I don't really know if that's something that WWE needs to do. I've always been a Jericho fan, so I wouldn't mind seeing it if it was done right. Could it be entertaining? Maybe. I do think I would like to see him back in WWE for a couple more matches, just to end his career there. But by the time that finally happens, he might just be too old and there's real no worth in it, and he can't really go as much anymore, and he's even worse booking-wise than he is now. So I'm not exactly sure. But it's not a bad idea. I would like to see it, but that's in just a couple more years, so I'm not really sure if that's feasible. His next question, I saw an interview with Jimmy Fallon featuring John Cena, and he said that for WrestleMania, his schedule is open. I know he can't build to a match in WWE TV right now due to his movie schedule, but I was thinking WWE have Dominic challenge Cena to a match at Mania, similar to how Cena did with The Undertaker and how Owens did with Austin. It could also get Cena a desperately needed win, and it would be on the grandest stage. Would you book that this year? Would you book this year or no? I don't know what you meant by that last part of your question, but that's actually a really good idea. That's actually not a bad idea at all. Cena, the whole story with him, and I like how he has a story too, and he's not just popping up randomly. The whole story with him is that he hasn't won a pay-per-view match in, over 5 years, now 6 years? Or a singles match, even not even a pay-per-view match. He has not won a singles match. He won on that Fastlane a couple months ago, but he has not won a singles match in almost 6 fucking years. That's crazy. That's crazy. Now, if you were to team, like I saw people pitching this, and I mentioned this idea in an article the other day. If you were to team with Cody and win against the Bloodline in night 1 or even lose, it doesn't matter. It's a tag team win. If he has a singles match, that would end that story. Now, it would be weird for Cena to come back in storyline and do anything but target Solo Sikoa, because he destroyed the guy at Crown Jewel, and he said that he ended his career. That's the last we'll ever see of Cena in WWE. Obviously not. We talked about that before. So it would be weird for him to completely ignore that. But then again, it would be completely on brand with the Cena character, because he's done that many times before, where he doesn't really wrap things up or doesn't go back to things that make sense. He just kind of moves on, and nothing really bothers him, and he's on to the next thing. So that would be cool. It would get Dominic on the show, too, because I don't see Dominic having a match. Rhea has a match. Priest and Balor have a match. I don't see Dominic having a match this year, unless it's in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. So that would get him on the show. It would get Cena in for a quick attraction, a much-needed win. I would not mind that at all, honestly. If they kept it short and sweet, I feel like that'd be cool. I don't know if they can have him start calling him out now, but then again, they started building to the whole Cody and Rollins thing at Mania, and even Owens and Austin mere weeks out from WrestleMania. Like, they didn't even really do it 2 months in advance. They started doing it mere weeks ahead of WrestleMania. So I could definitely see them doing something similar with Cena, where they don't even really, they could start as soon as Monday, they could wait until WrestleMania itself, and just do a moment type thing, like with Rock and Cena at WrestleMania 32. Cena wasn't advertised for that show, he wasn't even cleared yet, but he came out, made a surprise appearance, and helped Rock fend off the Wyatt family. You could do something similar here as well. Let's see. Last questions here from Brandon A from YouTube. He says, "What's up, GSM? I, as usual, hope all is well." His first question was, I keep hearing that Gunther should be a world champ within the next year. I agree with that. I also keep hearing that how Seth should drop the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania, either to Drew McIntyre or Damian Priest via cash-in. How would WWE be able to do this effectively with so many heels and feuds that are already established? If Drew wins it, shouldn't he get a good run with the belt before he drops it? Damian Priest should also get a meaningful run. If you want to make the cash-in matter and actually build him up as another main event talent, both are heels and need to drop it to a babyface first. That's correct. Even if they waited for Punk to come back to take the belt off of Drew, then he still has a Seth Rollins feud after that. This means Gunther ain't seeing that title for at least another year and change. On the other hand, Cody could drop it to him, but that would mean Cody would have an entirely, or rather relatively short run, and he is supposed to be the new face of the company. How does it make sense with all of this in play for Gunther to win a world title so soon? So the whole Cody thing, I gotta mention this. If Cody were to drop it within a month or two, that is too quickly. But anything, like, if Cody were to drop it at SummerSlam even, people would be disappointed. Oh, it wasn't nearly as long as Roman's. Cody should not even hold that championship for a year. I'm honestly at the point now, I'm a big fan of long title runs. I'm at the point now where I'm fucking sick of them. We see so many long title runs in WWE these days. Everyone holds their championship for a year. Or to the point it's not even special anymore. We can benefit from having some shorter runs. Not like a week or two run, but like 4 or 5 months, a good meaningful run for a couple months where they defend against a couple different people, drop it, get the belt back soon after. That's how you build new stars and generate interesting stories, as opposed to someone just holding a championship hostage for an entire year. Once in a while, that's fine. Gunther, it's been great. Rhea, Bianca did it, Becky did it, the Usos did it. A lot of long-reigning champions. Austin Theory was United States champion for like fucking 9 months, completely unnecessary, and that reign wasn't even really all that meaningful towards the end anyway. With Gunther, the big thing is that Bash in Berlin is in August. He's got to have a big match on that show. And I think having him win the world championship on that show with that sort of crowd behind him would be fucking sexy. Because what else does he do on that show? Does he defend the He should not be Intercontinental Champion by August. By that point, Gunther's got to move on. He does not need to be champion until August. And he should not be dropping the championship on that show either, because people would boo Chad Gable or whoever would have beat Gunther on that show. So he should not. He should be in the main event of that show for a world championship. I don't want Gunther beating Cody. You're right. I think Cody can go to SmackDown. Gunther stays on Raw. Cody can defend against Orton and other people over on SmackDown. For the World Heavyweight Championship, I do hope Drew wins. The Priest thing, you can wait until Money in the Bank. I don't know if Drew's going to be champion for more than a couple months. They don't have to be champion for 3 months. Drew could drop it within a month. As long as he beats Seth for it at WrestleMania, that's all that matters. He should not be losing to Drew. Drew should not be losing to Seth 3 straight pay-per-views. There wasn't 3 straight pay-per-views. He lost to him at Crown Jewel and on Raw. At day 1, I think. He should absolutely fucking beat him at WrestleMania. Even if he held the championship for a month. And then Priest were to cash in or whatever. I honestly don't really know how you go about it, because the draft changes everything as well. Gunther could end up on a different show. Priest could bring his briefcase to SmackDown. Priest could cash in on Cody instead. Very possible. Hopefully not right away, but at some point on SmackDown, very possible. That's what I would probably do, to take Priest out of the equation so he's not cashing in on Drew or whatever. I think Drew... we talked about Sami beating Gunther. You could have Drew beat Rollins. Sami beats Drew. Gunther beats Sami. Now, that's all within the span of 5 months. That is pretty quick. Drew can have not a relatively quick run, but he could drop it in like... Honestly, Sami could win it at SummerSlam and lose it like mere weeks later, because it's not really about the run for him. He can always win it back from Gunther down the road. You could definitely do that. And again, Gunther is going to be favored wherever he goes. Maybe he's the one to beat Priest. Maybe Priest or Drew McIntyre hold the championship and they hold it all the way in. I mean, I don't really want to see Gunther and Drew again. He's already beaten Drew a few times. But, you mentioned Punk and whatever. Punk doesn't need to beat Drew for the belt. Punk won't be back for a while, so you don't need to do that. I think all roads, to me, should lead to Gunther becoming champion at Bash in Berlin and him holding the championship at least until WrestleMania, where he can drop it to a Sami or someone like that. That's what I would do. So with that being said, I think you can have Drew win, and then maybe he faces, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not really, it's not clear cut because, again, anything can change with the roster shakeup in the draft because a lot of people end up on different shows. The championships could change shows. It's kind of hard to say right now. I'm not really sure, but I think Gunther, regardless, should win the championship in August. That, to me, is just makes all the sense in the world. Your second question, following up on Gunther talk, does it make sense for Gunther to drop the IC championship strap to Sami? We are already probably looking at Cody winning, Miz and R-Truth winning, Bayley winning, and possibly KO or Randy Orton winning the United States Championship. On top of that, no matter who wins the Rhea-Becky match, it will basically be a babyface winning since Becky is a face and Rhea is a face masquerading as a heel. We can't have a million babyfaces going over throughout the course of the weekend. I think Gunther should retain, otherwise it doesn't make sense. Make the other wins as special, especially Cody. It was great to see the babyfaces triumph at WrestleMania 35, but even then you needed the Samoa Joe squash on Rey and Shane beating The Miz to even things out. I'm sorry. Shane beating Miz was still fucking dumb. I don't give a shit. You don't need to even things out with Shane beating The Miz. That was fucking terrible. I will die on that grave. That was awful. Anyway, because Miz never got his win back either, so that was even worse. But anyway, you say, I used to hate the fact that Miz... Actually, you continued on. You said, I used to hate the fact that Miz lost that match. But in hindsight, I feel it was needed to balance the show with... That doesn't matter. I know what you're saying. You needed to balance the show with so many big babyface wins. Do you agree or disagree? I completely disagree on the Miz thing. This isn't even your question is not about the Miz. It's about, like, should Gunther lose the championship to Sami? I'm not even thinking about, like, oh, we need this many heel wins and babyface wins. You don't need to really look at it like that. I understand what you're saying. That's not going to be the case every single WrestleMania. If it makes sense to have someone win, you make that person win. If it makes sense to have that person win, then that's who you have win. I mean, that just makes the most sense to me. My fucking computer's having a meltdown right now. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm looking at WrestleMania 35 just to prove a point here. I do not think Shane should have won that match. Could you have Miz lose there and then get his win back down the road? Sure, but they never did. But let's see. Looking at the results from Mania. Again, this isn't your question, but I just wanted to see it. Rollins won the Universal Championship. AJ won. He beat Orton. He was a babyface. The Usos retained their tag titles. I mean, they could have lost, and that really wouldn't matter. That match was pointless anyway. Shane beat Miz, as you mentioned. You needed a heel win, like you said. You didn't need to have Shane beat Miz. The Iconics won the tag titles. Okay. That's a heel team right there. Kofi won the WWE title, babyface. Samoa Joe retained. He should have retained, and he did. Good. Roman Reigns beat Drew. You could have had Drew win. I know Roman was coming off, I'm cancer-free. It didn't even matter. They could have easily had Drew beat Roman on that show. Baron Corbin beat Kurt. You didn't mention that in your article or in your question. Baron Corbin retired Kurt Angle. That was a pretty fucking depressing finish. Triple H beat Batista. Okay, Balor and Becky all won their baby faces. Yeah, it was a babyface heavy show. But that doesn't mean they could have switched to one or two results. On that point, I just got to say that, because Shane should absolutely not have beaten Miz. That was a very dumb decision. Miz actually had momentum as a babyface, and they just flushed it down the fucking toilet with that result. But anyway, back to your original question. I apologize for that. You're just talking about, should Gunther, does he have to... It's not even like you're saying does it make sense for him to lose to Sami because there's already a lot of babyfaces winning. I'm not even looking at it from that standpoint. Sami shouldn't win the championship, period. He has nothing to gain. I already talked about this, but Sami has nothing to gain. The stories with Gable, I would rather see other people beat Gunther for the belt than Sami. And I like Sami a lot. It would be a great moment. And it doesn't really take away from Cody's or vice versa. You could spread them across 2 nights. That doesn't really matter. Like, if they had the Usos win last year and Cody win last year, or the Usos lose, sorry, if they had everyone in the Bloodline lose, it wouldn't have mattered. Now, that's like saying the Usos, them losing, Roman needed to retain because the Usos lost the night one. No, that doesn't matter. You can have, maybe not every championship change hands, but you mentioned the U.S. Championship. I wouldn't change that. I wouldn't have that change hands either. I would not have KO or Randy win. I think doing a triple threat actually helps Logan Paul. It increases his odds of retaining that championship by pinning Kevin Owens or some dumb shit like that. Bayley could lose. I don't know. I think Bayley should win. I think Becky's probably winning. Rhea could retain. Cody, should absolutely win, obviously. Gunther should not lose to Sami, regardless of what is even happening in other matches. Should not lose to Sami anyway. And adds to the Sami story, the whole underdog thing for him to be built up more in defeat, that whole shit, whatever. With Gunther, I just don't think Sami's the right guy to beat him. So, those are my thoughts on that. We move on to the Facebook, I almost said Twitter, the Facebook questions. We got a lot of questions, but we got to go quickly through these, so I'll try to not spend as much time. That's a me thing, by the way. I just spend a lot of time in your questions because they're great questions. But No L from Facebook, your first question was, what would be your top 5 Shawn Michaels WrestleMania matches of all time? I mean, really any of them, but the Taker one is 1 from 25. The second Taker one would be 2. So there you go. Those two, Kurt Angle, you could probably put Angle at 2 or 3. I mean, it would easily be 3 if it's not 2, but, I would probably put that at 2. And then the Taker 2 match at 3. The WrestleMania 26 match. So that's 3 right there. I don't think I'd put the Iron Man match in there. I don't know if that's really, I just wouldn't put that in my top 5. It was historic, but I don't know if I would do that. The Razor match, the ladder match at WrestleMania 10, let's say that's at 4. And then from that point forward, the Brett match, no. Diesel, no. 13, he was not on. 14, he faced Stone Cold. Would not put that on there. So that was 14. The Jericho match probably would be at 5. You could also put the Benoit Triple H match, but it wasn't really about Shawn. I mean, you could put that one on there. I think the Jericho, I enjoyed the Jericho match more, but the triple threat is awesome. It's one of the best triple threats ever, so you could say that one. Probably that one, I don't know. That's interchangeable, I think. You wrestled at WrestleMania, 22 against Vince? No. Against Cena? No. 24, Rick would be a good one. I wouldn't put that on there, though. 25, we already mentioned. 26, he retired at. So, yeah, I would go the WrestleMania 25 match at 1 for Shawn. The Kurt Angle match at number 2. The second Taker match at WrestleMania 26 at 3. 4 would be, what did I say, the ladder match with Razor Ramon. And then at 5, probably the Jericho match, or more than likely the triple threat from 20. I'm kind of torn on that one. Your second question, do you see the Judgment Day slowly destroying themselves in the coming months following the WrestleMania season? I think so. I mean, they've been together for 2 years now. They're a great group. But Rhea's basically a babyface anyway, like you said. I don't know if you're going to split them up in the draft, because that's not how the draft works nowadays. They keep groups together, kayfabe in the draft, so if they did that last year, why would they be split up this year in the draft? Unless it was their choice to go to separate shows. But yeah, I think they could probably start to tease tension, and we might get that once Priest hopefully cashes in successfully. Now, if he doesn't cash in successfully or attempt to cash in until July, when the pay-per-view is, that might not happen anytime soon. But I do think once Priest cashes in, and I would have him win a World Championship, we can go back to the story they were telling a year ago. Balor gets jealous, we split up the group that way, Rhea goes off on her own, maybe with Dominic. A lot of different directions you can go in, but yeah. I think 2024 can be the final year for Judgment Day, because they've kind of done it all. They might benefit from going their separate ways at this point anyway. WWE's got a lot of stables. It's just not really all that necessary. But if they were to stay together, no complaints. They're a great group. I'm just saying, I think to freshen things up with them, they can't. I wasn't okay with them breaking up a year ago. I thought it was too soon. By this point, I'd be okay with it, if done properly. Chris L. from Facebook, first question was, when he retires, what do you think the legacy of R-Truth will be? For me, he's not just the first ever black NWA World Champion, but he's also a very versatile performer. He's a great babyface and effective heel, can be serious, can be hilarious, is a strong tag team wrestler, is a believable single star, is in amazing shape for his age, and so much more. He's also been known to get a gimmick of a slow-minded idiot, over by being genuinely hilarious most of the time. So by the end of his career, what would you say his legacy would be? You summed it up perfectly. One of those versatile performers in that entire company, and also one of the best comedy characters of all time for this company as well. I don't know if he's number 1, but he's very much on that Mount Rushmore, and very much high up on that list. But you're right. He's had a lot of success championship-wise in WWE, TNA as well. Can be a great tag team guy, singles guy. Had a brief main event run for a while. Very beloved. Longevity. I think the longevity and the versatility are his 2 top attributes, in addition to just being funny. But I think that's really what helps him stand out more than anything else, and really what his legacy will be when he inevitably gets inducted into the Hall of Fame, which could come before he even retires. I mean, the guy's been around for so long. Who's to say it won't happen before he retires from WWE? We saw it with Ray. Could very well happen with R-Truth as well. Your second question, which match do you consider the better John Cena WrestleMania match? Cena versus Shawn or Cena versus Rock at WrestleMania 28? For me, I will always choose his match with Shawn over either of his matches with The Rock any day. Yes, while it drew a ton of money and was massive to the mainstream, the match itself was very slow and had too many dead spots throughout. On top of that, I have always had a soft spot for WrestleMania 23 because of the visual of Ford Field, but I overall felt the card was stronger than 28, which was a mostly three-match card. What is your choice for the better Cena main event? Yeah, it's funny. I'm more of a WrestleMania 28 guy. I really enjoyed that Mania. I thought that was one of the better Manias they've done in a long time up to that point. Probably since Mania 24. It was definitely better than 27. 26 was good, but 28 was better, I think, overall. It's better than 25. It was on par with 24. 23, we're talking about that one. I've never been a big 23 guy. I think Mania 23 is a very good show. It's just not among my favorites. But anyway, you're talking about the better Cena match here. I think the Shawn Michaels match is definitely better. Now, I love that Cena match with Rock, actually, the first one. The second one was terrible. It's not about the match, though. Like you mentioned, a lot of slow spots and stuff like that. It was about the atmosphere. When that bell rang for Rock and Cena 28 after the year-long build, it was a big fucking deal. It was special. There were near falls. They told a great story. Cena got cocky, and it cost them the match. Great finish. And the fact they had to run it back, and Cena won was one thing, but just the match sucked, and the story wasn't all that interesting. I didn't really want to see a rematch. They could have just left it at Rock winning and move on, but they really wanted The Rock to elevate Cena. Whatever. The Cena-Shawn match is an objectively better wrestled match. So, that one. Cena and Rock I enjoy more. That's more of one of my favorite Mania matches just because of the build and the atmosphere and the outcome and the finish and the execution and stuff like that. The Shawn match I have no real strong attachment to at all. But is it a better wrestled match and a better match objectively? Yeah, I mean, I would say Rock and Hogan is a better match than Cena and Shawn because the crowd for that was incredible. But I just don't look at Rock and Hogan being worse than Cena and Rock. In terms of the in-ring action, Cena and Rock may have been better, but I think just Rock and Hogan was just so special. It was like, so was Cena and Rock the first one, but I don't know. So we're not talking about Hogan and Rock, though. I'm not even just talking in the ring. I'm just talking overall package. I probably would go Cena and Shawn by a slight edge. Not a slam dunk, but a slight edge, in my opinion. It's definitely better than the second Cena Rock match, which, like I said, was terrible. Your second question, what was the bigger and better WrestleMania moment? Daniel Bryan winning the big one at WrestleMania 30 or Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn winning the main event last year? I was there for the second one for Owens and Zayn last year, not there for Mania 30. You got to go Mania 30. Owens and Zayn was amazing. The Usos were champions for like 2 years. They were finally champions together in WWE. The match was amazing. The Bryan match, all the circumstances around it, because Owens and Zayn was always the plan. That was never not the plan. We said that many, many months earlier. People were like, oh, Sami's going to win the World Championship. No, the end game with him is winning the tag titles with Owens at WrestleMania. The story is with the Usos, not really with Roman. I said that at the time, and I maintain that now. With Daniel Bryan, the story was always with the Authority, him overcoming the Authority and becoming champion. They moved away from that for Batista. And it's not Batista's fault, but he was the wrong guy for that spot. And maybe that match would have worked a year earlier or some other time. But at that point, it just didn't work. So they factored Bryan back in. He was white fucking hot. I mean, Owens and Zayn were really white hot too at that point as well. And they were still over now. But Bryan was even more over than they were. I mean, it was like the Cody thing from what we're seeing now. I think that's more comparable. But if you're to ask, like, Cody hasn't won the championship yet, he could lose, let's face it. If Cody wins at Mania, and you ask me which moment is bigger, that is more debatable. I think this one is an easy slam dunk for Daniel Bryan. I feel like that moment was amazing, the match was great, closed off a historic and very good WrestleMania overall. So I got to go that one, Daniel Bryan winning the big one at WrestleMania 30. And your last question here, I love the Okada heel turn last week on his AEW for his AEW full-time debut. It was something I didn't see coming, and I thought it was very well done. I know, however, you were not a huge fan of it. However, I felt you and RJ were too harsh on it, not benefiting on a long-term basis. Okada being with the Bucks gives him immediate heat and can now feud with the other top baby faces, many of which can lead to multiple big-time pay-per-view matches, including Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega when he eventually comes back. I just felt you were both kind of judged it before it really got going, will you give it more of a chance? I mean, I don't know if I said that, but I am willing to give it a chance. It's not the worst idea. It does make sense. They have history. You can build a Okada Omega. That's great. My biggest issue with it was this. For me, I'm not speaking for RJ. I'm just saying for me. The Bucks shtick at this point, and they played their roles really well against Sting at Revolution, just does nothing for me. It just doesn't. I have go-away heat towards those guys. I'm probably in the minority here. I just don't give a fuck about the Bucks. I mean, maybe this will benefit them more, but that's the problem. I feel like this will do more to help them than it will to help him. I feel like he could have just debuted as a heel on his own. And yeah, they could be his mouthpiece, and I said that, and get him immediate heat. But I just feel like anything with the Elite melodrama is just stupid. I'm just not a big fan of the whole Elite, like, oh, we're feuding, we're friends, we're feuding. Like, it's been going on since the beginning of this company. It's just like, move the fuck on. And we're getting more of that by having the Bucks feuding with Okada. So, I'm not a big fan of that. I don't know. I mean, it's not the worst idea. I'm just saying, personally, I'm not a big fan of it because I'd rather see Okada on his own. Even as a heel, it's fine. I wouldn't have turned him heel, but I get why they did it. I just think putting him with the Elite is just, ugh. Like, I feel like he could go do his own thing. That's the thing. Find another mouthpiece. I don't know. The Bucks thing, I mean, I'm willing to give it a chance. Maybe it will become better than I think it will be. But I just feel like it immediately establishes him, in my opinion, as just another guy. Because that whole Elite faction in 2021, when they were all heels and they had Gallows and Anderson and Nakamura, not Nakamura, I'm sorry, Nakazawa, what was his name? Michael Nakazawa, right? He still works there, obviously, but he's not on TV anymore, thank God. But like Brandon Cutler was out there. It made Omega feel less special. Even with all the belts, and he was great and whatever, but like the whole Elite shtick where there was like a million guys out there, like it's NWO circa fucking 2000, it was a mess. So that's my issue with the whole Okada heel turn. I am willing to give it more of a chance, but I'm not overly optimistic because the whole Elite thing just does nothing for me right off the bat, personally. But we'll see where it goes. Now we jump on over to the Twitter questions at Reborn Again on Twitter. Real Honesty with John Ritland on YouTube. Great content. Check John's stuff out. His first question was, and again, these aren't organized, so just keep that in mind. He said, non-wrestling related. So after the studio screwed over Nev Campbell and didn't want to pay her for Scream 6, they come crawling back to her in Scream 7. Desperation much. Now, I know we talked about this over DM as well, John, and you're 1,000% correct. I think this shit is a mess. Because they fired, I think, the main actress, not Nev Campbell, I know what you were talking about with her. And they came crawling back for her, and she's coming back. I don't think that's enough to salvage this franchise. I've never been the biggest Scream guy, but I really liked that last movie. I know we were kind of reversed. I think you liked 5, you didn't like 6. I did not like 5 at all. I liked 6. And the main girl I was never a big fan of, but the story is with her. So they got rid of her for the Palestine comments or whatever it was. And then Jenna Ortega then quit the franchise. I don't think they let go of her. I think she just quit. Either in solidarity for her or for another reason. I don't know why. But those are your top 2 faces of the franchise, especially Ortega, who's an objectively bigger star, and a lot of people watch these movies for her at this point. And she's gone too. So even if you bring back Nev Campbell, because they didn't want to pay her previously well enough, and now they're going to pay her better now just because the other 2 stars are gone, it is definitely desperate. I just don't feel like this movie's going to be any good. They should have just scrapped it. After the 2 other issues with the other actresses, and I mean, with them being gone, I don't really know how they salvage this thing. They could probably just hit reset again and just hit the reset button again, but I don't know. It was like mildly interesting with the way it ended in the last movie, and now that's completely fucked because they're not, those actresses at this current point, unless something changes, will not be in the movie. So then what's the point of even continuing the story? I don't know. I just think the whole thing is a mess. I'll probably see it anyway, but the movie sounds like it's going to be a disaster. At Iwagu91, their first question was, well, I'm glad that Sami Zayn will challenge for the IC Championship at WrestleMania. I feel bad for Chad Gable due to him having personal reasons to want to go after Gunther, as well as the fact that he has yet to hold a singles championship his entire career. What are your thoughts? I said this earlier, but I completely agree. It should have been Gable. I understood why it was Zayn. They should have been building up Gable months ago. They did that to themselves. WWE did. Could he still beat Gunther at some other point? Yeah. It's not likely, but it's possible. I hope Sami loses regardless. I just don't think Sami needs to beat Gunther. It would be a great moment. I wouldn't hate it if he did beat him. It just doesn't need to be Sami Zayn. So I do wish it was Gable, though. They had a ready-to-tell story right there, ready-made story with him. They didn't tell it for a while, got back to it, only to take it right away from us with that Sami Zayn win on Monday night. But whatever. At Reborn and back to John, his second question was, is Cody in danger of becoming way too, way too melodramatic with his promos? The family stuff I get, but he's becoming a bit too over the top with me. I mean, I understand. I know you're not a big Cody guy in his promos. You think it's phony or whatever, and that's fine. No, I think it's cool that he shows emotion. We don't really see enough of that. He doesn't need to cry maybe in every promo. I get that. You want to make it feel special and authentic. I think it is authentic. You don't want to do it every single week. But other than that, I think the promos are great. It's emotional, strong, personal stuff. The family stuff you can't bring up every single week, especially after he becomes champion at some point, hopefully at WrestleMania. But yeah, maybe tone it back and find a better balance of it. You're 1,000% right. But Cody, to me, is one of the best talkers in that entire company with the right material, and I think he's showing that right now. So I don't really have an issue with it for now, but at some point, if it becomes too much, you might be right. At Iwagu91, back to them. Do you consider Undertaker's final successful unbroken WrestleMania streak defense, what a mouthful, against CM Punk to be his last great match of his career? No, I don't actually. I think he had 2 great matches after that. You could make the argument for 3. So the 2 that come to mind for me are the Brock match at Hell in a Cell. I thought that was a great match. The Brock Hell in a Cell match at Hell in a Cell 2015. I thought that was great. The other match is the AJ Styles match. If you're not talking, you're talking about like actual matches, that's a cinematic match, but I don't know. I would count that. His last match ever was a great match. I thought that Boneyard match with AJ was awesome. The third match I could maybe consider, but it was a tag team match, and it didn't really do much for me, period. But a lot of people were praising him at the time, was Taker and Roman versus Shane and Drew. I think it was Extreme Rules 2019. That was also regarded as a great match. It was a very good match, but it was a tag team match, and it was random that Taker was even in there. It was kind of like a make-good for him after that awful Saudi match. It was kind of to allow him like, oh, let's get back into it after that terrible Saudi match. Kind of redeem yourself because that match was awful. And that was a really good match. But I would probably go the 2 that I mentioned. The Brock one from Hell in a Cell 2015 and the AJ Styles match from WrestleMania 36. So not every match after the streak was broken was awful. He did have some good matches. Just the majority of them weren't really all that exciting. At Colin_McAndrew from Twitter, his question was, did you remember to buy my WrestleMania ticket or at least get a secondary press pass? Yes, I want this answered on your video. It's coming in the mail, Colin. It's coming in the mail. Just let me know when it's there. It should be there shortly. If it doesn't come, you're gonna have to take it up with the postal service. Because I sent it. I sent your ticket. I sent your press pass. I don't know. It should be on its way soon. At Iwagu91, your next question, when do you think Swerve Strickland will become AEW World Champion? I think he wins at a Double or Nothing. He could win at a Dynasty if they do Joe and him again one-on-one. It's kind of hard to justify Swerve losing again after losing at Revolution, although he wasn't pinned. The latest I would do is Double or Nothing. If you're going to do Joe and Swerve at Dynasty, Swerve can win there. That's totally fine. But if they have him lose and extend the Joe run, which is great by me, then you have to find a good way to protect Swerve in defeat to set up a rematch, one final shot where he has to win a Double or Nothing. At noob_n_code TV, their first question was, do you think Sasha Banks, a.k.a. Mercedes Moné, will make an impact in the AEW women's division when she debuts tomorrow, a big business, or tonight rather? I say that she will be all right, and I hope fans on social media don't go overboard when she debuts. I mean, that's inevitable. That's inevitable. I'm not even the biggest Sasha guy. She is great. I'm not like her biggest fan at all. But it is a big, great get for them. I mentioned that. But she's a very polarizing figure. The internet either loves her. I mean, there's people that just don't care about her. But there's a lot of people that love her, a lot of people that fucking hate her. So it will be and a lot of people that hate AEW too. So it'll be a very interesting combination. But it should be a pretty similar reaction, I would think, on social media from the AEW diehards, the people that hate AEW. Thankfully, I won't really be on social media because I'll be there, so I won't really have to deal with that. I won't really see it as much. But I do think she'll make an impact. Will she be a game changer? I can't say that. We said the same thing about a lot of other people, and they weren't game changers. I don't know if any one person at this point will be a game changer for AEW. But I do think she'll help out a lot with the women's division, give them more focus, more television time. I think it's hard to say that she'll have a negative impact. Maybe no impact, but I think she'll have at least something of an impact in that division. To me, definitely, in one way or another. Your next question. Ever since Andrade made his return to WWE, it seems like he's seemingly becoming friends with Dominic Mysterio. Is he taking him out of the Judgment Day? Taking Dominic out of Judgment Day? I don't think so. I don't think there's any real reason to make them a team or anything. I think Rhea and Dom are too great to break up right now, even if Judgment Day were to break up. I think it's more likely that we get Dominic and Andrade at Mania. They're kind of subtly teasing it. And we probably will get it on Raw, but if you wanted to do it at Mania as like a quick undercard match and Andrade wins just to get him on the card, I'd be totally fine with that. Especially if Dominic doesn't do the Cena thing that we mentioned, which I forgot about the Andrade thing, but I don't think Andrade is going to become friends with him and team up with him. I think it's more likely we get Andrade and Dominic one-on-one. I don't really think there's any real reason to have Andrade and Dominic team. That seems pretty random to me. Although I know they've been teasing it recently on Raw. Last couple questions here from @U13A. First one being, how many DreamWorks movies have you seen? I don't know. I mean, I know you say that because I just recently watched and reviewed Madagascar, I think, but I don't know how many DreamWorks movies I've seen. I get that mixed up with DreamWorks and the other one. I don't remember. Isn't Shrek DreamWorks? Because I've seen all those movies, so I have no idea. Your second question, have you heard about the movements to bring back Brock Lesnar? No, that was the first I've seen of it. The tweet that you tagged me in here from @WrestleLlama. I mean, they're not the source. It's Wrestling Observer Live. I mean, I'll believe it when I see it. I think it's way too soon to be bringing back Brock. I think there's a pretty good chance we just never see the guy again. Did he do anything illegal? Necessarily no. But, like, he's a pretty fucking weird guy, and just, it's not, it's just, I think morally wise, it's probably not the best look to have him back in the company. If he was texting with Vince about, like, if it was part of the deal for Brock to re-sign was to fuck this employee, I mean, that's a pretty disgusting tactic. So, I mean, he seems like as weird of a dude as Vince, if not a little less bad, but still pretty bad. They don't need Brock. He seems like a weird fucking dude. It's only been a month and a half. They really want this to die down. You don't bring back the guy after a month and a half. I'm not saying that they won't bring him back and then they'll just have the fans deal with it. I just think it's too soon. And your last question, do you think it's more beneficial that AEW doesn't make stars like Bryan Danielson world champion? And then you tagged me with the quote that he said at a recent SXSW interview with Britt Baker talking about he doesn't need the world championship. And he's right. Your question was, do you think it's beneficial that AEW doesn't make stars like him champion? No, I mean, it's all circumstantial. I mean, look at their first world champion was Chris Jericho. And I wasn't a big fan of it at the time, but Jericho ended up being the perfect first world champion for that company. Helped put them on the map, get more eyes on them because Jericho's established, got to work with the younger guys. He was doing great character work at the time. If it was Jericho circa 2024, then probably not. But at the time, he was doing great work. Ended up putting over Moxley in the end, and Moxley wasn't even a homegrown guy. It wasn't really until Omega won, and even him, he's a New Japan guy. So, no, I don't agree with that at all. I know Punk, you could say, oh, he didn't need to be world champion either. They put the belt on these people to put over other people. That's the point. So if you were to have Danielson win the championship, and there was no real point in the last 2 years where he could have won the belt, maybe instead of Moxley in late 2022, after Punk got suspended and whatever and hurt and they had to vacate the belt, Moxley won the championship, but he was like the perfect interim champion. I wouldn't have wanted Daniel Bryan to win it just for a month. I mean, you could have. I mean, it would have been better than nothing, I guess, so I probably would have done it then. But beyond that, there was no other point where he could have won the championship. He wasn't beating Paige for it. He wasn't going to beat MJF for it. I mean, I don't know when else he would have done it. He could still do it. Could he beat Swerve for the championship? I feel like that window is past, because Swerve should win the title. He should hold it for a little bit. Ospreay's in now. There's other people that could win the belt. So probably not. Adam Cole may not get a run with it. He was kind of primed to win it at one point. So I'm not sure. I don't think Danielson's going to win it at this point. I would still love to see it. But I disagree, though. I feel like you don't need to have him win the championship. But if it makes sense, then you do it. I mean, you put the belt on him to put over a guy like an MJF or a Wardlow or someone like that, or a Ricky Starks. Even if he's not a world, that's like saying, I mean, it's not the exact same thing, but it's like saying, oh, never have Daniel Bryan win because there's no real point in having him go over. Well, the whole point is if you have Bryan go over and win a majority of his matches, when he does lose to a homegrown talent or a newer face, it means something. Same thing with him as world champion. Does he need to be champion? No, he needs to win matches, but he doesn't need to be world champion. But you put the belt on him, so like with Punk, the whole idea with Punk was they put the belt on him because he was probably going to drop it right back to MJF a little bit later on in the year, and that would have been how MJF became champion, not by beating Moxley. So, in that way, he would have elevated MJF. So it's not like they're just putting the belt on him just as a mid-card talent. I mean, WWE is way more egregious with that, where like they put the belt on a mid-card guy, or not a mid-card, a part-time guy, my bad. A part-time guy, and then they're just champion for the sake of being champion, and there's no end game. That's the problem. With Roman, it should be the same thing. He's a part-time guy at this point, doesn't need to be world champion at this point. He should be champion now to elevate someone else, not another part-timer like Brock or Cena or Orton or whatever, who's not a part-timer, but you get my point. Rhodes has never been world champion in WWE. He can elevate Cody by losing to him. Bryan being champion could have elevated, like Joe's the same thing. Joe does not need to be champion. Joe's towards the end of his career. Does he need to be champion? No, absolutely not. But he's champion, so he can put over Swerve in the end. And he's just great at his fucking job, and he's great in the role. So I disagree with that. Not really what Bryan said, but what you said. It's as far as it not being beneficial that Bryan's not world champion. Because if he is, or like a Joe or a Punk, then they can put over someone else in the end. That's the whole point. So that's going to do it, guys, for today's edition of #AskGSM, episode, 537 here today. Wow, that's crazy. Head of big business tonight, like I said earlier. Looking forward to the show. Should be a fun time in Boston, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you guys for sending in your great questions. Another lengthy episode of the show per usual. What else is new? If you want to send in questions to the show, tweet me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section in this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Enjoy big business tonight. We'll catch you right back here next week for another all-new episode. Until then, I'll catch your ass down the road.